Hi everyone. In this lesson we're going to take a look at this final effects group. Now that we've already made all of our other adjustments and painted in whatever we need to paint, we're ready to do sort of a final color grading pass and adding some effects in here. So let's just turn this on. You can see we're adding some bit of atmosphere to our scene, which is mainly what this group is for. So let's just go through here and turn all of this off, and I can show you what each one of these elements is doing. So the first one that I usually like to start out with is the Z-depth pass, and using that to get a little bit of some fog and some depth in the scene. So the way I like to use this, I'll just make a copy of this and just delete this mask. Okay, so you'll start out with something like this, and I like to set this to screen blending mode. So you can see it's kind of giving you that fog effect. And then I'll create a exposure adjustment layer on top of this, and I want this to affect only this layer. So to do that, you can hold down Alt and then move your mouse right between the two layers and click, and it will affect the layer below. The other way to do that is over in the Properties tab. You can just choose this icon here and have it affect this layer only. Then with this selected, we can start playing around with the exposure and the gamma correction, and we can kind of choose where exactly we want this fog to be. And this works really well, especially if you render it out in 16-bit, because we have all of that color information in there that we can push this pretty extreme and it'll still look pretty good. So that's kind of what I'm using for this. And then I've just masked out some areas here where I don't really want it to affect. For example, I want to be able to see the sky in here. So that's why I've kind of masked out some of the sky. And then actually I'm using a hue saturation adjustment on top of this one, just to give it a little bit of color. Just kind of give it some blue color to blend in a little bit better with the background. So that's the first thing. Then I painted in some lights in here, getting a little bit of lens flare. Now for these, you can, if you have an image of a particular light flare, you can just bring that in and copy it around a few times and scale it down. For these, I just have a brush, and I can just paint these in individually and just turn the opacity down a little bit. And then I have this car streak going by in the background, and that's just an image of a car streak. And this is set to the screen blending mode, and then it's just kind of masked out a little bit. Okay, so next up is this kitchen glow. You can just see some of this warm light coming from the kitchen here. And that's just painting a little bit of yellow color here and setting it to soft light and turning the transparency down. And this next layer is an overlay layer. I like to use these just to kind of highlight certain elements in the scene. So for example, if we just turn this off, create a new layer, let's set this to overlay, and then we go to our brush tool, and then let's give ourselves a white color, and let's turn down our opacity and turn the flow down. Then we can kind of start to paint and like basically highlight some areas in the scene that we want to stand out a little bit more. Alternately, we can switch to black, and then we can kind of paint in some black to darken up some other areas. But I'm just going to turn this off. And really, I just want to highlight some of this stuff in here. Next one up is the little bit of a glow in here where the bathroom is. And this one works similar to the overlay layer, except this one is set to color dodge. So if we start a new layer, and let's just fill this with black, and then we'll change the blending mode to color dodge. Then if we switch to our brush again, and then let's choose a bluish green color for this, and keep these set kind of low, and then we can just kind of paint in and kind of exaggerate that glow in there. So that's more or less what this is doing. And then we have a little bit more adjustment to these palm trees. This is just giving them a little bit of brightness along the left sides, since we have the light kind of coming in from this side over here. And then above that we have a couple we have this color wash layer. This is painting in a bit of a gradient with a orangish yellow color coming in from the left side. And this is set to pin light, just adding a little bit of coloration in from this side over here. And then above that we have this vignette layer. This is just painting with a really soft black brush just around the edges to give it that kind of photograph quality, and it focuses you in to the center of the image. And then above that there's two adjustment layers. These are sort of a final adjustment layers. The first one is a selective color, and what this is doing, if we just go in here to the blacks, just adding a little bit of color into the blacks over here, a little bit of warmth. And then finally there's this black and white adjustment layer, and this is set to overlay, and the opacity again is turned down pretty low. This is just giving the image a little bit of pop, just to give it a little bit more contrast. So that's basically it for all of these, the final effects group. So once you're happy with all of your Photoshop work, then we're ready to save this out. So we'll just go to File, Save As, and we're going to save this as basically our flattened TIFF file. So set it to TIFF, and then make sure we turn off layers, and then go ahead and save it. And make sure your compression is set to none, and discard the layers. Say OK. And that'll save that out. And in the next lesson we're going to try out some cool filters in another piece of software called Magic Bullet Looks.